Hello and welcome. Welcome to Navigate the Narcissist 6-week co-parenting coaching course. I'm the author, Grace Wroldson, author of several books, including Co-Parenting with a Narcissist, 7 Self-Rules to Stay Sane. Welcome, session 4. The tip of this week is that self-work and self-help is the most important work you will ever do. So that's why so much emphasis is placed on self-work. A common mistake is seeing that our children need help, but not recognizing that we need help too. So if you notice your child is suffering, maybe you can't see that you're suffering from stress of it all. So this is Navigate the Narcissist 6-week coaching course. This is my Navigate method. N stands for not doing it alone. You go and you get support. And if I repeat myself, that means it's super important. A is for always safeguarding our custody case. V is going from victim to survivor to thriver in your journey. And I is for in the know of tactics. You do have to educate yourself and to reduce the triggers and the trauma. G would be for gathering evidence and documenting like a pro. A is for acknowledging the mistakes and the weaknesses in your case. T is for taming emotions and reactions. We learn to respond and stay sane. And you most likely will be under pressure, stress, and attacks while grieving the loss of your family and your dreams with that person. So that's why it's so important to address the stress, have a place to vent your stress. And E is for enjoying our time with our child and focusing on what matters, which is building bonds, trust, memories, the love that you have for your child. We have to focus on the good because there's so much bad. So we want to emphasize, E should be for emphasize what is going good. And we'll get into that later as we practice our thoughts of gratitude. So just another disclaimer, you can check the disclaimer in the video description. Every case is different. What worked for me may not work for you. What worked for others may not work for you. So you have to take what you like, leave the rest. And again, if I'm repeating myself, that means it's super important. I'm the author of several books. You can find all of my books on Amazon. They're not just my story and survivor story, they're my survivor wisdom. So they're written in self-help style so that you can take those lessons and learn the lesson and apply it to make your situation better. So we're in session number 4, and I have some questions. Are you fighting yourself? You might see yourself fighting the narcissist, but you don't see that you're fighting with yourself. Are you fighting well-meaning, well-intentioned other people's advice? This happens often. We fight with therapists who just don't get it, or family members, parents who say, just get along. They don't get it, which means we lose energy with all of those things, not just the narcissist. So it's important that you preserve your energy and cut out conversations with people that drain you. Session number 4, the first part is dealing with ourselves, healing and triggers. I'm going to talk about healing a lot because it's needed. I believe that narcissistic abuse syndrome is real. I don't know that it's diagnosed yet. Maybe by the time you're watching this, it's diagnosable and that there's many different treatments. I hope that's the case. So this is session number 4. There's worksheets to go with all of these so that you can be journaling your awarenesses and your awakenings and your insights. Those are important. What's hitting home and home run with you, anything I'm saying, if you write it down, it really does sink in. So work with the experts. If you're dealing with narcissistic abuse syndrome, you need more than just therapy, regular therapy. So are you doing a specific program? Because there's trauma bonds. There's gaslighting, which can make a person go crazy and we end up gaslighting ourselves. There's coming out of denial. There's so many programs out there. Find one that works for you. If you are a child of a alcoholic or dysfunctional home, there's a 12-step ACOA program that has promises. You could be working that. If you knew you were codependent in that relationship, there's Codependence Anonymous. You can be working those 12 steps, getting sponsors, going and attending support groups. If he was an alcoholic, you could be an Al-Anon, working those 12 steps. There's also famous authors out there that have their own abuse recovery programs that deal with not just the mental and emotional, but the physical and the spiritual part of this. So find a healing program and maybe try one or two. Don't just try one and say it doesn't work. And try to find the experts. And like I had to find a therapist that dealt with narcissistic abuse who had written her own book on it. Not just a therapist who says, "Oh, I know what that is." They've never lived through it, they've never been through it, they don't know how to identify the things that are happening. I do believe a key is to work with the experts, because if you don't have solid support, you fall into fight and flight mode, and you don't want to go toe to toe with the narcissist. And this will never be a fair fight if you fight the narcissist, because it's never going to be fair. And because they don't have a conscience, so they're going to fight unfairly. So, if you're fighting without a conscience, you'll do things that other people wouldn't do. And if they don't do it directly to you, they'll let their lawyer do it or somebody else do it. And so it won't be a fair fight when you're fighting a narcissist, and you won't get a complete fair ruling. Maybe you will. Maybe you're that 1.001% that gets everything they want, but the rest of us have to learn to live with the wins. If you read my first book, that yellow orange book, you'll see how I had to shift my mind to live with the wins. And the reason that you want to get the help and support is to be the best parent that you can be. It involves you being healed and whole and healthy, not a stressed out, strung out single parent, or a parent who's now in another draining relationship. So it's important that we get the support that we need. And what is your plan to deal with the triggers? Who do you call when you're triggered? Do you call your best friend, who then eggs you on to file motions? Do you call your family, who then blames you for being in the problem and blames you for the whole thing? Don't call those people. You need the pros. So please find us and work with somebody one-on-one. Get somebody in your corner that can really help you with the mental and emotional part of this, and give you the right encouragement. So we have to deal with ourselves. We have to be doing a healing program or several, having support, and knowing what our triggers are and be voicing them. Are you naming the attack? That's important. If you see an attack coming, instead of feeling attacked, that you can name the attack. Here is an attack coming, and then planning for a strategy. So you call your mentor, you call your coach. This is what's coming over from the other angry side. How to best respond or mitigate or neutralize or de-escalate those threats and attacks. There's counter maneuvers, so stay tuned for that. If you want, this could be really helpful. What are the top 5 things that trigger you? And talk to that all those triggers in a therapy session with a DV counselor. These are my triggers. These are what set me off. This is what hurts my ego, pushes my buttons. These are my top 5, because then when you see yourself getting triggered, you can say, oh, it hit my button. How to cut and disconnect that wire. So know what your triggers are. Awareness is a key. Can you name the type of abuse and co-parenting abuse? That can help you stay objective. Oh, this is gathering flying monkeys. This is poisoning the well. It can really help you. Also, a lot of people who are codependent or in these relationships or with a sociopath are silenced. Can you even name how you feel? I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling tired. I'm worn out. Can you name how you feel? If you don't know how you feel and you're in such a state of confusion, this is where the support comes in, getting a voice. There's so much guilt. You can be having guilt that is holding you back or weighing you down. You could have shame that is holding you back and weighing you down from not requesting your rights from a judge or speaking up. There can be so much disappointment and hurt and pain that has to be processed with a professional. So if you can't name how you feel, it's important to get to someone safe, a safe person. And this may not be your best friend or your new partner or spouse. It may have to be someone who's not on one of the sides, that just is a neutral person. So when you have the weekly therapist, DV counselor, life coach, you cultivate a strong, powerful voice. I got my voice from having had so many meetings under my belt, from 12-step groups, of saying how I feel, what I'm going through, being able to say what is up in my life. That helped me. I started off stumbling and stuttering, and then it became clearer. As I became clearer in my mind, it became clearer in my voice. And this is co-parenting abuse. It's the abuse that you can't see. You'll see the in the middle, when the image pops up, a iceberg. At the top, you'll see physical violence. Everything underneath that iceberg is abuse, co-parenting abuse you can't see. And here's a tip. Some mothers actually win because of the abuse, but other mothers who've been abused don't even say they've been abused, because they don't understand emotional abuse, coercive control. They don't even know they were abused until they're out of the relationship. That was me. And I wasn't able to talk about the abuse because I never got help for abuse. And that's what some therapists and domestic violence counselors work with, is talking about the abuse. And if you're not comfortable doing that because you've had no practice, because you haven't been in front of a therapist or a mentor articulating it, your articulation can be key, especially when parenting coordinators come in. You're forced into co-parenting therapy. If you have a GAL investigation and you can't articulate the types of abuse that you suffered at the hands of the other parent's behavior, that can hinder you. You just look destabilized and emotional for no reason. You have to give these people the reasons. So can you easily spot it and name it if abuse is happening? Do you know a counter maneuver to abuse? Do you know how to neutralize a threat? Do you know how to address a threat? We have to level the playing field. They're fighters. Generally, us empaths, codependents, are not fighters. We're lovers, peacemakers, but they're fighters, and they're good at this. And that's why they're so smooth and clever, and their tactics can be so passive aggressive. You've got to know what you're dealing with to be able to say it. And a lot of people say it's not a custody battle, it's an actual war. And you might feel like it becomes a war, especially when you're not with them anymore. You're not manipulatable. The lawyers generally draw hard lines, paper bullets fly over both sides, and it becomes a war to fight and survive. Some of us learn to strategize and not fight, or let the lawyer fight, and us strategize and make peace and remove ourselves from being the target of blame. I'll talk about that in later sessions. So an important part of this is to be planting seeds of peace and saying neutralizing statements, because what we say to the other parent can grow, just like what the negative stuff they called us, whatever, fat, incompetent, lazy, whatever names you were called, that's all name calling. You can be planting good seeds in the other person's minds. And those planting of seeds has to be carefully done with a coach, with a lawyer's permission, so that nothing you say and do goes against you. But if it was printed off and used against you, the judge would find you as a more cooperative, peaceful parent trying to generate goodwill and wanting to focus on the child. So think about what neutralizing mature statements you can craft that will quell the ego battles. One of the things I used was, the courts believe that a child's at a disadvantage if the child doesn't have a mother and a father in their life, and we both bring something to the table that each other can't, and this benefits our child. I said that so many times to try to get him to stop trying to eliminate me from our child's life, and help him see that there's value. I don't know that it worked, but I can tell you I have peace right now. So something worked, and I do believe in planting seeds and goodwill. Even with someone that has not been nice to you, I do believe in being nice to the narcissist, because when they're angry, they're worse. Or if it's a sociopath, when they're angry, it can be dangerous. So I do believe in presenting as the lawyer is the one handling the battle, and they're doing what they do. And I'm here to just cooperate, tolerate, be peaceful. And so I've made up a lot of neutralizing statements. You can work with me if you need to do that. these statements were as much for me as they were for him. I needed to understand that the courts were going to give him parenting rights unless there was something, a smoking gun, as my lawyer said. There's no smoking gun to give the judge a reason to eliminate him. So without a smoking gun, I had to learn to tolerate that the system is unfair, it's unjust, there's corruption, there's parents' rights, even if they didn't earn them. And so I had to say these things that were true, that the family court believes this, and learn to humble myself in front of the judge. So I wanted to stop being part of the problem, which was standing up to him and telling him off and telling him what he's doing wrong. I had to be part of the solution. And a lot of people say, this could be fixed, but I believed my situation was more of a predicament than a problem, because problems have solutions, but predicaments don't. So I feel like I was in a predicament, backed up into a corner, and I had to back down, or I was going to lose my child completely. The we statements can help. You can look for ways to communicate, or we need to get along for the sake of our child type of statements, or we can start saving our money, instead of on legal fees. We can be keeping our money in our own pockets instead of lining the pockets of lawyers. My ex loved that. I learned to take some of the things that he said, and so that I was speaking his language, what mattered to him. His money, his image, I would speak to. It makes us look really good if we get through this parenting class and we show up at her games. I learned to talk the lingo. So just think about planting seeds, being nice to the narcissist, and your reasoning why. We want to try to use a neutral tone so that we don't give them anything to push against. If you are doing things that sound aggressive and assertive, you might get worse back. There's times for that. So if you're crafting something important, run that through your lawyer or your narcissistic abuse expert or your high conflict divorce coach, or your certified divorce coach, or somebody. My tone, I often had to run my speech by a couple people before it came out right, so that it wasn't giving him a reaction which would just feed him narcissistic supply. It was factual and it wouldn't be used against me, and the judge would have liked what I said. So there was a lot to digest and pick apart in what I was saying back. And remember, you can always use the BIF method: brief, informative, friendly, and firm. Get Bill Eddy's book. That's in the back of all of my books, as a recommendation of learning how to talk very businesslike with a high conflict person. This is still session 4, and we want to stop the overwhelm and simplify. I can't tell you how many mothers are stressed to the max. They're trying to have a new relationship, volunteer, work full time, have some side jobs. If you're trying to do too much, or you're documenting too much, and your focus is entirely on your custody case and you're not living a life at all, or if you're just working with a lot of anxious energy, so you're spinning your wheels and you're digging yourself into a mud like depression, think about what you can simplify. You don't want to do yourself in because you're such a giver, caretaker, that you start caretaking, since you can't take care of the narcissist or the sociopath, and you don't have your kid half time, you start taking care of other people instead of yourself. I mean, your self-preservation is a must. And my, option here for you, to-do list, if you want to take this, is to let one unnecessary thing go to simplify your life. I had to end my volunteer position that I loved doing. At first, it really helped me focus on something that I could make a good difference in. But then it was, I am doing too much and taking on too much, because when they ask you to do one thing and you're a giver, you end up doing a lot more than one because you're a giver. So is there something that you can let go of that adds a little bit more stress to your life instead of the court battle or co-parenting with a narcissist? Try to simplify your life. It's really, put your oxygen mask on first. Simplicity gives you so many gifts. Session number 4 is done. So what are you taking away? Type that in the comments below. Subscribe to this channel if you're seeing. I'll do free versions. What's been most helpful for you at this point? Post that as a message to me somewhere. I would love to hear what you took away that was so helpful. The action step the call to action is to join one of my Facebook groups, private Facebook groups. I have one, moms who have to co-parent with narcissists. I have co-parenting with a narcissist support group for moms. We are going to have weekly Zoom groups. They're free in 2022. So if you're listening and watching this, they're probably a paid 6-week or 8-week group where we talk with other people going through it. So you don't feel so alone and you can feel encouraged and supported. So find my Facebook groups, go to my website, find my groups, join them. You can post anonymously now on Facebook to what you're going through and get emotional support right away from others in it. You know, survivor wisdom is so valuable. It was for me. The Co-Parenting with a Narcissist, 7 Self-Rules to Stay Sane. You learn to set up rules with yourself. This book was right after I lost. And someone said, do an inventory. What's your weakness? Why did you lose? And I lost because I didn't have a family court lawyer. I had a regular lawyer. And that was my biggest weakness. And it turned out that all the other things that I've gone through weren't as stressful as dealing and wondering if my lawyer will show up, if he'll have his paperwork on time. He was good enough to help me through 6 years. He took my phone calls, emergency calls all the time, and I learned so much from him. He gave me the thoughts of a judge. He played devil's advocate. He reasoned it out with me. He instructed me all the time. He was great for phone calls, going through it, but when it came to a trial, he wasn't the best trial lawyer. So in this book, you learn to set up rules with yourself, which is, tolerance, learning to coexist. If you have to coexist, then you learn to do it well and gracefully. Practicing no contact, which includes don't be watching their life. If you're watching their life on social media, you are being triggered by what their life and they're doing, and that's still breaking no contact. So if you have to have modified contact, like we said in the beginning, request the parenting app be used. Ask your lawyer what the judge typically orders and stick with that. The gray rock method is great. When you're doing communication with your co-parent, it's going to be friendly. Some people have termed it yellow rock method, where you're friendly so that if a judge read it, they think that you are not the high conflict party. You are just trying to get along. So you're going to be setting up rules with yourself, not with a boundary crossing narcissist. The second book, which is what we're going to move into now, is How to Fight. You'll learn how I created the strategies. You'll see, okay, I have to do certain things that then pan out. It's things that I needed to be doing and thoughts I needed to be thinking. And that's how I moved from victim survivor to thriver. So I came out of being victimized, which I totally was. And if anybody puts you down and calls you a victim, that's name calling. We absolutely are targeted by these people, used and victimized. So we have to survive it, and then we can come out stronger than before. So this book is also available. It's the second book in my series. And it's not just survivor story. Again, there'll be listed the things to do, the things that I did, things that you can take and do if it applies for you and if you think it'll work in your case. Always run it by your lawyer. And then if you're in survival mode, if you need to survive this first and foremost, or survive whatever the person's doing, or a court battle, Co-Parenting with a Sociopath is my third book in this series, also available on Amazon. Gives you some more tips, tools, and tactics. I don't like to use tactics when I'm talking about us. I like to use tips, tools, strategies. When I talk about the narcissist, I talk about tactics and tricks, because they play a lot of tricks and they do a lot of tactics. Sometimes you can't communicate with crazy, And, how do you communicate with crazy? You really don't. So I do have a creating peace, co-parenting with a narcissist 1 hour webinar, and listen to that webinar. Listen to how I've decided the best way forward to talk to someone who is conflictual, oppositional, full of anger and rage, and think about planting those seeds, creating peace, using neutralizing statements, de-escalating the problem. Because if you want sanity, you can't be talking to an insane person then going insane yourself because you didn't get back the response or your message didn't get through to their head. Their head might be hard and thick, and you could say everything right. And a person who is determined to misunderstand you will misunderstand you. So check out that webinar, Creating Peace, Co-Parenting with a Narcissist, How to Communicate and Have Sanity. Also, check out the video, 8 Common Mistakes Moms Make. We're always projecting our good, empathetic self onto others, thinking they'll do the right thing. That's not who they are. We have to take people as we see them, believe who they are, watch their behavior, make our own decisions, even if they say they never lie and they're the nicest this and that. If their behavior doesn't match, then it's not true. So there'll be a lot of lies to sort and sift through. But there's other mistakes that we make as moms that can cost our custody case. So check out that video. There's a 7 free tips downloadable instant PDF if you are co-parenting with a narcissist. Learn all that you can. They're tips from my first book, and they're just the basics. And sometimes it's good to get to the basics. Like, this stuff, but now somebody's saying it, and it really puts a solid foundation under your feet. And we do need solid foundations to stand on, and we need solid support. There's a Get the Right Lawyer guide. It's a PDF, and you can print out 3 worksheets at the very end of 20 questions to ask your lawyer. They're all important questions. You can then look at the 3 consultations and determine what one will be right for you. And this will get you prepared for legal consultations. Even if you have a lawyer and you're in the middle of your custody case and you're like not happy with what's happening in your case, there's nothing stopping you from calling a family law expert that costs more than you could ever afford, paying $350 an hour or $700 for the hour, going in with that worksheet and seeing the strategy that they would take and how they would win your case. These consultations can really help you because your lawyer ultimately works for you. You ask them to file motions, you ask them to do and not do stuff. So sometimes you have to ask. There's so many moms not requesting their rights, not asking the judge for orders of protection or family wizard, or asking for supervised YMCA transfers, or there's so many things that we can be asking for. We have more rights than the narcissist thinks, basically. We have a lot more rights than they would ever give us, that a family court can give us. And not all the time family court is the best way to go. It can be corrupt, it can be unfair, unjust. It might be better to stay away from family court. And you can get that in a consultation. You can find out if you're going to lose, because 3 lawyers tell you that you're going to lose based on all that you have and what the law is and what the judge has to do to grant parent rights. Then those are worthwhile consultations. Then maybe you do a different strategy. So every case is different, and you'll have to take what works and leave the rest. So I've been giving you homework at the end of each video. So finish up Co-Parenting with a Narcissist, my first book, start the How to Fight, get up to chapter 2. And yeah, some moms don't fight at all and they lose completely. But we have to learn how to fight, when to fight, who to have the, who to do the fighting for us, and not to go toe to toe with the narcissist directly ourselves. Find somebody who is skilled in fighting, which that's what a lawyer does, is skilled in arguing and fighting. So you got to get the strategies, start learning and reading the strategies I made up as I went along. It might give you ideas to create your own. Maybe you can adopt some of mine, run them by your lawyer, see if they're going to matter in your case. They might be great ideas for you to implement that you hadn't thought of. And I had to scan and see who was out there doing what. How did they win their cases? That's what I wanted to know. And most of them paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to win their custody cases. And I couldn't logistically do that. So if I could write another book, it would be working on the logistics of a family court battle when you're a low income single mom. So we have to get resourceful. We have to ask for help, get over our pride, ego, humble ourselves. You'll learn all of that if you watch my communicating webinar. So get that book, get started on that book. That really does go along well with this program. So this is Navigate the Narcissist 6-week co-parenting course. I'm going to encourage you to keep going. Yes, these videos, I'm trying to make them 30 minutes long so that you can listen, start getting the wording and the understanding of key concepts. Start thinking about things that you haven't thought about, like creating peace with someone that you don't even respect, but respecting that the judge and the law grants people rights. So yeah, we have to practice radical acceptance, which means we accept that some things are true that are completely unacceptable. It's a contradiction. And if you were ever in a relationship with a narcissist, in like a long-term relationship, it wasn't a one-night stand, you'll know what cognitive dissonance is. You have two opposing thoughts in your head. You might want to look that term up, where they're great, but they're awful. You love them, but you hate them. And cognitive dissonance can keep a victim so confused and so hurt. And I had that for so many years until the term came up, cognitive dissonance, which is, okay, I really don't know what I think because I think both things because both things are true. So let these terms like scapegoating, like if they're mother blaming all the time and you're being scapegoated for everything, learn these terms. The truth can set us free. So keep going. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next week.